start putting in some pretty high fee level deals to be able to achieve that. Or be they maybe multiples or individual deals. I need to be able to see, in order to, I always think about at least 20 times the amount of fee opportunity in a client base. And the other thing is that in the specialisms that I would go after, or how I would work it. That's what that spanner and pencil in the corner there means, apparently. So specialisms that I would use. So okay, so starting up, start with the end in mind. There's an old saying, and there's a lot of truth in it. People don't plan to fail; they simply fail to plan. A plan is crucial. Now, I'm not talking about some great long encyclopedic document here. I'm talking about a one-pager where we look at who are our top clients, who do we want them to be, our tier 1 clients, our gold clients, platinum clients, whatever you want to call them, and what is the opportunity within those organizations. Now, I've just put some numbers up here for the sheer hell of it, but just to give you some thought, really. If there was in the top tier of clients, there was a million of potential fee income, and I could, so we're talking about some pretty large organizations there, then I could secure, if it was a million, if I could secure 10% of that, then that would be 100,000 of my target, for example. So I want to be able to see from these various different groups or rankings of clients the opportunity. Now, in the buying sector, our tier 1 clients, we probably only have 1, 2, or 3. In fact, 2. It's risky, isn't it, to have too many in that top tier. So we're going to have the majority of the clients that we're working with in what I would call the emerging client base, and that's from leads we generate regularly, and working those into what I call the working platform, which is where we're starting to make placements with them, maybe even multiple placements, but they're not at the buying level yet, the regular buying level. So what would personify a buying level client, if I was to start ranking clients, which I will later, that's an organization that listens to us, that has the right amount of money to spend, where we can agree good terms, where we can have access to hiring managers, etc. But we'll talk more about that later on. So there's some very, I need to, the moment I start work, I need to have in mind this little triangle of where the money's going to come from. And I think in the day-to-day life of a recruiter, it's very hard to lose track of that. So again, homing in on the planning, a day plan, making notes, writing what do you want to achieve. Now these boxes on the day plan can be populated by the golden KPIs that you have, but essentially, you've got to be doing work every day that's urgent and important, but also that's not so urgent and important. And I think business development work is something that fits into that. But I've seen recruiters, and certainly it was something that we had to write plans every single stage when I started out back in the day. You had to write a plan, an annual plan. You had to update it quarterly and update it monthly with your manager and your director. And every single day you had to have a clear plan of work and what you want to achieve over the course of the day, but also have that linked into a month plan. And as we go back up into week plan, month plan, quarterly plan, annual plan. I can't emphasize enough the value of planning. I'll talk about it more later on. We have to treat our time as golden, and look at core hours. Am I going too fast, by the way, Ali, in your opinion?
No, this is great. If I've got anything I need to add, I will do, but all good so far.
Okay, because my aim is for this to last, not more than half an hour, and then we can get into some questions and things at the end, ideally. Okay, so, early bird catches the worm and all of that. That's our time for getting in. Too often I see people drifting in. They're not really ready to work. They're eating cornflakes or whatever at the time that work should be really starting. So getting in early, for me, it's time effective as well. It's, I think, commuting-wise, I know a lot of you guys maybe work from home or other locations on this program, but making sure that we make good use of the time to get our head in the right space and make sure our plans are in place before we go into the day. I've sat with people before. I said, right, get up your calling list. Who are you going to call about this particular vacancy? Or about on the client side, who you're going to market this particular candidate to client-wise, and they just run a search on the database literally minutes before they going to start making calls. And where I've seen the most successful recruiters, what they do is they have a detailed plan. They've actually listed out every single person, every single contact. They've got them into a search list on their database, or even written down on a bit of paper in front of them, or on a spreadsheet, whatever it is that you use. But so you're making the same, and I'm going to talk about the benefit of this later on as well. So you're making the similar type of call over and over and over in a call time period, so in a golden hour period. So I've called them golden time or core hours because different organisations, different people want to call them different things. But for me, golden is relevant because it's this time you should absolutely ruthlessly treat as golden, as this is where the money's going to come from. Okay, so we're well prepared, we're well planned when we go into these golden hour phases, and we keep meetings, trainings, things like that outside of these. Even when we've got new starters or new trainees on board, we give them activities, even very simple ones, that they can do in these anywhere between 4 and 6 hours a day of work. Then, as I say, I don't believe anyone can work 3 hours non-stop without a break. You need some type of reset, some type of how far have I got, taking check on yourself, getting up, stretching the legs, walking around 5 or 10 minutes in the middle of it before we go again. But making sure that we break down, that we were able to concentrate for the full amount of time. And then a decent break over lunch. For me, it was always a trip to the gym if I could, or I'd go out and see a client or have candidates in or whatever. But something productive and a bit different to shake off the dust of that hard bit of graft and golden hours that we've done. And then really, same thing over again in the afternoon. Some organisations like to do candidates in the morning, clients in the afternoon, or vice versa. That really depends on your model. I've seen, companies in the medical field, for example, they find a decent candidate, then they can market them out in the afternoon. So they spend all morning trying to find one at least really marketable candidate, and then they spend the 3 hours in the afternoon marketing that person out and following up on that, for example. So that has to be something that works in your particular model. Key difference here between contract and perm, I would spend my time as a contract recruiter doing a lot of my marketing work in the mornings, and then a lot of my candidate generation and fulfillment work in the afternoons. That's just the way around I used to like to work. Yeah, and a lot of this is about resetting it, not kidding yourself, but about setting your day around where you know you're going to be most productive.
Ben, can I just add here? A lot of the the issues that I tend to see with recruiters that are just coming through the ranks, and they start doing really well, they get jobs on board, and then they start billing, and then their billings start really fluctuating month by month, and it tends to be because they pull jobs. They'll work the jobs, and then when they're working those jobs, their golden hours and their core hours tend to go out the window because they don't have time to do the business development or filling out their NPCs because they're trying to fill roles. Is there anything that you would suggest that they could do to be able to try and stop that yo-yo part of it here?
Yeah. On the contract side, if you get a highly qualified vacancy in the day, depending on your market, you probably have to drop everything else. In all of my experience anyway, in contract, vacancies are golden.
Yeah.
So you do stop and you do work that job. But if it's a quality job, now and we'll talk about fillability and quality jobs later on, so I know that's dear to your heart, Ali, it is to mine.
Yeah.
But if someone starts, and the phrase I've heard a couple of times in the last few weeks is eating rats. If you think, oh, I've got a vacancy, even though it is a rat, you're going to eat it in golden hours, that's a waste of your time. You're kidding yourself, you're deluding yourself, you've got a vacancy. So if it's a low-grade vacancy, don't work it, don't get distracted. Seek the higher purpose of finding higher quality opportunity in that time, and using the contact methods through the client converter, or ones I'm going to share with you earlier, which are my personal favorites, to try and work people into a state where they're not just going to be somebody who gives you a vacancy, but they're going to be a client who values you as a partner.
Brilliant.
Okay. Now, sourcing strategies, of course. When I was a lad, I didn't have the internet, but I think a lot of the means, so that both complicates the issue, I think, as well as helps it in some way, because post-internet, average sales per recruiter dropped to about 1 a month, whereas prior to the internet, they're about 4 or 5 a month. So productivity significantly dropped as a result of the internet, competition, etc., etc. Anyway, for candidate sourcing strategies, I'm going to share with you something a little later on in this presentation. But I think they have to be proprietary. If you want to be a top biller and charge very high fees, you have to have proprietary candidates. So what I mean by that is candidates that aren't just on the books of any old agency recruiter out there. So passive candidates who are worth more, who are going to stay with clients longer, who are going to get promoted through the ranks within those organizations, who are going to add significant business value to the places they're going to work. And we build that proprietary list from research, mapping organizations, so looking at where the sources for talent. So we might, for example, have organizations that are really good at bringing on graduates and training them for the first couple of years. It's property companies like this. Some of the big the big property companies train a lot of their staff, get them through qualifications in the first couple of years, but they're then underpaying them. And they're mismanaging them because they're quite large, some of these organizations. So they're a prime target for finding someone who's well educated, highly qualified, and is underpaid, for example. Yep, so I'm mapping those organizations probably more as a source, so from my candidate generation side, than I am from a client side. Social media, obviously, has its use massively. I mean, very small recruiters now have full-time marketing departments. You know, I've always worked with marketing. I think it's crucial. I think it paves the way for better and sort of stickier, higher success rate with our calls that we make if we've got a big voice in social media and we're reaching out over LinkedIn, Twitter, and other media to both our candidate and our client database. And we're saying intelligent stuff. We're not just posting our vacancies. We should be doing that, by the way. But we're saying intelligent stuff about trends in the market and what's going on. So we're making ourselves, we're establishing our profile as an advisor and as a go-to person that organisations can ring up for advice, as well as they can ring up to actually get their jobs filled quickly. So for me, candidate generation is a developmental activity, as is client generation. We'll talk some more about that in a moment. Ali asked me to talk about business development strategies, because I think this is critical. I think this is an area where people do shy away, and this is definitely a difference where we become, it's a key difference between average billers and big billers. The ability to
butt in there. Sorry, Ben. It's really interesting as well, because this slide set that you're looking at now, I only saw this today, and what you're seeing here is, and I'm going to put it back to when I was billing, and I was billing up quite highly, about 750k. It took me about 5 years to work out that these are what I needed to be doing on like a daily and weekly basis. And Ben put this into both his billing and his company's billing as well. And it's exactly the same as, some of the messages that me and Nikki have been presenting out to you. And I just wanted to just say that, I haven't looked at this beforehand, and this is what Ben has come with as a high biller. And exactly what you're saying, this is the difference between a medium biller and a high biller, and this is how you get that super billing status. So sorry, Ben, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I just wanted to add that little bit.
No, well, it is interesting, isn't it? It really is. I mean, if we're relationship building with individuals, with organisations, which is what we're about, what highly successful recruiters are about, we have to introduce ourselves. When we introduce ourselves, we make a benefits-driven introduction. So what I mean by that is we talk about specifically a project that would be of interest to them, or we talk about how the fact that our last that we recently placed a number of people in a similar skill set to what we know that organisation is struggling to recruit. So we make it highly relevant, and we make it a benefit statement. Ideally, we're using that, a recommendation or a testimonial, something we've been given from somebody, and again, in an ideal world, it's connected to that person in the same universe as them, whether they're a candidate or a client. And to achieve high fees, you typically have to replace more senior people. So again, this is one of the things I'm going to talk about in a minute. Overlapping your client, your candidate universe is extremely important. Candidate marketing is widely recognized as the most successful route for recruiters to generate new clients. So it has to be up there. But what I see a lot of time is people hiding behind mail shots, pumping out CVs, and not actively even following up on them, can you believe it, in some situations. Yeah. But also, candidate, again, this is about being efficient, is organizations, and I'm talking to many organizations now who do this, they generate really good candidates for their vacancies, but if they don't get the job that they're working on, they don't do anything with that candidate. And that's just crazy, really. That's like, a supermarket just letting product rot on the shelves, really, isn't it? So if we've got good candidates, and they have to be good, they have to be MPC candidates, then we should be marketing them out. And we should be marketing them out by ways of phone call in the first instance, and ideally securing interviews over the phone and handling objections over the phone, as I say, closing to an interview when we've got interest. And I'd do that simply by stressing 2 or 3 key USPs, unique selling points about that candidate to the client on the phone, and saying, and again, I toned down my language a bit there. I said, when would you be interested in seeing this person, or or at least having a telephone conversation if they're batting back on seeing. But I don't ask interviews. I think sometimes that language can put off if they're not actively looking for someone. And I'd stress the passive nature of our candidate base. Look, these people are passively looking, they're not looking for a job right now, because typically one of the objections you get is, well, we're not looking right now. And I said, well, but most organizations that we work with are passively looking for the very best talent. Would you say you are? Are you open to that? Yes, I am. Okay. Well, anyway, I haven't got time to go through my own philosophy on how to make each of these calls, but let me just outline them a little bit more. I think if a big biller typically has a high profile, is well known for being a font of knowledge. Talk about research. You know what's going on the street, and you as a person and the organisation behind you should be widely known as a go-to place for salary information or for update on what skills are in demand or that kind of thing. So I advocate sometimes making research calls and into an organisation, say, look, we're conducting research, we are into skills development in this particular area. Can I ask, would you be interested in participating? Yes or no? Would you be interested in perhaps speaking at one of the events we've got coming up and holding? So these are the events that are they are recruitment related in some way, but they'll be business related and people related, and then people tend to respond to us differently, and we can segue that conversation into one about recruitment, and we can easily produce 2 or 3 page white paper, push that out to the organisations that we've talked to, or even I would go and present the findings to them, maybe even invite them to us on this type of session, a webinar, or for a breakfast meeting or whatever. So that's coming in as it from a research led. Now, I'm not trying to turn you all into research companies or anything, but I'm trying to say, look, if we're saying we're advisory and we're boutique in the way that we work, which we should be, then research and knowledge is something that we should be seen to be actively developing and contributing, therefore, to the industry that we're working in. As I say, there's still an iron fist inside the Velvet Glove. It's still a business development method. Service is all about maybe lapsed clients or organisations that we know are doing a lot of recruiting. We might ring in and ask them how they're finding it, how they're finding the experience. And again, this could be linked to a research call, because we're seeing a lot of demand. We're seeing that you're actively advertising, looking, how are you finding the experience? And when people see that you're not actively trying to sell to them straight off the bat, they'll often talk. They'll talk through that. And you say, well, then you can thread in questions such as, well, look, in an ideal world, if you could start recruiting all over again, how would you do it? So you start to build the picture of how they're doing it perfect. So it could be for lapsed clients, or it could be for clients who are hiring right now that we know are using competitor companies, or we know are doing it directly, seeing where the holes are, and obviously identifying those as gaps that we could market our service into. Reverse reference and reverse headhunting and candidate marketing are all particularly successful, I found, in the contractor market. So using any contractors, any interims I've ever provided, I guarantee to my clients that I'll have conducted some quality assurance and some due diligence on them. And as part of that, I say that to candidates. And I know candidates in some markets can be a little suspicious of this, because agencies do use it to gather hiring manager names. But nevertheless, if I ring in and take a reference out on somebody, and the contact might back and say, "Oh, sorry, we can't do that here. We have to speak to HR." Then I'll just ask for a testimonial. But it's a great way of, again, combining effort. That reference is possibly another name. We can ask for peer references, then more names. It's name gathering. It's mapping an organisation. It might be an organisation we intend to take people out of rather than place people in. The reverse headhunt, this is a classic. There's a guy from a big technology recruiter who's struggling to get a meeting with a head of department out in Scandinavia. And this guy was saying no, no, no to him. And I talked to him about the reverse headhunt, and he said, "I'm going to try that." Rang the guy up. He said, "Look, I've got a role on. I don't think this role's quite for you, but let's discuss it." Talk through the role. The chap said, "No, you're right, it's not." He said, "By the way, I've been trying to get a meeting with you. How about we come up and see you in the next couple of weeks?" And he got the meeting. So the reverse headhunt, I'm going to run through just in a moment, if you can sort of hold that slide in your mind. I'm also going to run through how we can cycle these calls, because I think each of them proves something. And we're not in product sales, are we, where we can show someone how a machine works or a device works or whatever on the face of it, but actually we can. So taking the reverse headhunt that I've just talked about, it's a great name gathering tool and also a great business development tool, as I mentioned. But I've flipped those calls there and then and said to the client, "Look, it's good that you're interested in this. I understand you have a large department, but can I ask you, how did that feel? How did it feel to be approached by us? Because we've just made a headhunting call. And if we were working with you as a client, that's how we make that call to candidates on your behalf." So it's a service demonstration, isn't it? Do you see where I'm coming from? I can't get feedback on this, but
yeah,
hopefully
totally, totally.
But if we're saying we're quality-led and we're quality-driven, we can prove that through the fact that we reference people, the fact that we call, we're interested in the service the clients receive, we gather service, we conduct questionnaires, etc. So I won't go through all 6 of these, but you can see that we will dedicate time. Professionalism, for me on the introduction, if I introduce myself, my first name and second name, what I do, the organisation I represent, and why I'm making that call, that's highly professional. Now, obviously, 8 out of 10 of those calls, we either get voicemail or we get someone who's not that interested. But it doesn't matter. I've been professional in my first approach. And we get the ability, say through, if you look at candidate marketing, we have the ability to demonstrate our service, but also demonstrate our capability. That's why those candidates must be good.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And particularly on the contract side, we spend a lot of time approaching managers, a lot of time approaching hiring managers, particularly when we're building a desk from scratch. So we don't want to get, caught up perhaps in some of these other areas, but certainly quality, due diligence, demonstrating the service, demonstrating our capability, absolutely critical. Okay, so that spot right there in the middle is something I've alluded to a few times, the recruitment G-spot, if you like. Basically, what I'm saying here is that in order to work in that central spot, that red spot in the middle, if I was taking a reference out for a job that I was working on, so delivery is working a job, candidate development is developing candidates for the vacancies we have now, but also good candidate streams of passive candidates for vacancies we're going to have in the future, because we're working a niche skill set. in most instances anyway. So if I take out if I'm working on a job and I take out a reference on a candidate for that job, and that referee could be both a potential candidate and they could be a potential client. So I'm doing something that is almost doing 2 jobs at once, with 3 jobs at once, because it's going to make the delivery easy, it's going to make the candidate marketing calls easy, because I can push. So I've got a reference on this person, I've validated them, they're strong, and from the when I'm asking the reference, how many people are in the team, how many people are in the department, how are they organised, how many other people did you have like this individual I'm taking the reference out on. If the call goes well, I can get a lot of the information that I would want to gather on them as a client. So I'm doing several things at once. So combining activities can actually help us generate greater results faster, that's for sure. Right there. The other thing, I did quite a lot of work on and gave a talk at APSCO a few years ago now, all about creating trust. And I've given you the answers on the right there in order to play a guessing game on this. But how do we generate trust? Well, the funny enough, the major complaint that candidates and contractors have about recruiters is around reliability. They say, well, they rang me up about a job and I've never heard anything again. Clients will say, well, they came to visit me, promised me they'd have some good CVs with me within the next day or so, and I've never heard anything again. So reliability and proving ourselves reliable is critical. Now, we can do this in business development, and I do it a lot by saying, right, I'm going to ring you in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, at 9 o'clock. Is that a good time? Yes, it is. I might even go as far as sending them a diary invitation for that time. Expect a call from Ben and Brett to follow up on this. So I can demonstrate my reliability even in a very cold call. And for the next call, I can demonstrate that I'm reliable. And particularly when we are working jobs, for example, working vacancies, creating what I call a recruitment timetable, and it means that you are more reliable. It means you can put the effort in. So I'll have a short list with you, 3 candidates that are my closest match for this job by Wednesday at 10, putting in the Outlook reminder into that person's calendar to say, right, call with Ben Brett to review shortlist that he sent me. So I can prove myself reliable. I can link these things together, and I use the recruitment timetable as a big sales tool while taking a job down anyway. So these are things that increase trust, credibility. So somebody who knows the market, knows what they're talking about, understands something of the skills and the people. We don't need to know the ins and outs of every single skill, but we do need to know about our market, trends that are going on and things like that. Reliability, I've always given some insight to. Also, intimacy. Now, I think in order to be intimate with someone, you have to share intimate information about them. That's when we can really tell when the trust's coming. I think sometimes people ring up and say, hi, how are you? Well, they don't mean it. It doesn't sound great. But if they spotted from that person, they've done their research, they spotted from that person's LinkedIn profile or from their CV or from their Facebook profile that they're into a particular type of sport, or they have a dog, or they're married, they've got kids, whatever it is, we can start to be intimate and say, oh, I noticed that you've got a Shar-Pei dog. We've actually got a Weimaraner, whatever it is. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, how much do you find you have to do with the dog during the day because you're working hard? Whatever it is, we can establish some intimacy there. But we can also, it's much easier to establish genuine intimacy with candidates because we have to know if they're married, if they've got a dog, especially if we want thinking they might relocate or work a long way away from home or whatever it is. Contracts tend to be quite flexible in that department. The thing that reduces trust is self-orientation. So we have to do things that will break the cycle. So what I mean by this is things like when a client starts to say, well, actually, we're looking for someone at the moment. Now, a recruiter would jump on that and say, really? What is it? And say, well, look, I wasn't expecting at this stage in the relationship to actually start to work on vacancies for you because this is the first call. And we really would need to know a lot more about you before we can start working on your vacancies. That breaks that cycle, breaks the cycle of self-orientation, of selfishness. So try and think when you're face-to-face with a candidate or a client about advising them about their career, if it's candidate, or even their career if it's a possible client. But on the skill, sometimes not closing too aggressively, but saying, well, look, what we could do is we could take this job back to the drawing board and rework it. But from what you're telling me, Fred is 90% of the way there. You know, thinking about that, what are your options? I mean, he might go, so talking it through rather than just hard selling Fred's your man, you've got to hire him, you know, he'll take a job next week. That sounds like self-orientation. Taking the client through the steps that are maybe in their mind at that time can reduce that self-orientation.
Ben, can I just add there that Sean's actually put a really good question up there, which really relates to this, but on a candidate side. And I guess it comes back down to trust and self-orientation. And Sean's question is, how do you manage with candidates that refuse to give you any references? I've come across it a lot, and candidates get suspicious and just back off. And I think this is probably because they've had other recruiters, especially in IT and contracts IT for sure.
Yeah, that works for pulling that. So the sort of thing I would do is I've done things like I'll send them a document that has the client's logo on it and our logo on it. It's neatly formatted, saying name of referee, company, something like that. So it looks like it's come from the client organisation. I would also show them maybe the service level agreement that I have with that client. Say all candidates come to interview will be referenced, or come to that we represent you will be referenced, and and explain to the candidate, because often candidates don't understand the model. If we say, look, we work very closely with our clients. They only see 2 or 3 people from us. Each of those people were presented through the CV, the references, and through my notes. Now, if I represent you without any references attached, clients could well ask why. So I would say I'll position it to them. Look, you've got a very high chance of getting this job. Because I'm only going to submit a few people. I'm working exclusively or very closely with this client, and by providing references, you strengthen your case. I can guarantee you right now that I will not use those. I will not use those references for any purpose in the first instance, other than asking about you and about your performance when you were with them.
Yeah, great.
Now, would you like your CV to go forward being represented in the best possible way, or not quite that way? What do you think? Some people will still say no, particularly IT contractors. I understand that. They'll say, well, I'll provide them later. And so, well, look, just, if you could give me the names or the organisations you're thinking about, then I guarantee you I won't approach them until we're at that point. But what I might say things like, well, this client's got fed up with, particularly on the perm side, we can say this. They get further down the line, and then a reference comes out of the woodwork or is asked for, and it's not as good as they'd expect.
Yeah.
I got my fingers burnt by providing contractors without references once really badly. Now, the client told me that the guy had a drink problem. After he'd interviewed him and he liked him, he did some checking out behind the scenes on somebody, and I vowed from that point onwards that I would not put candidates forward without references.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Talking about fillability, a lovely term, isn't it? It's interesting. An organisation I work with, they developed this fillability thing internally for how to grade vacancies. Because like we were saying earlier, we don't want to eat rats. We want to eat the good stuff. We want to eat sirloin steak or high quality fish, whatever it is that you're fancy. We want to work on top quality vacancies. So we have to grade vacancies to be able to do that, particularly if we have junior people working in the teams. All of the experienced recruiters on this program, probably in their guts, know whether something's good or not, but we can always kid ourselves. We don't want to kid ourselves. And this organisation, we're using this fillability for internal purposes. And then they found out someone in their Dutch office was taking it to clients. They had these questions that would take, and the guy the Dutch guy turned around to his client and said, "Sorry, we can't work this. You're only coming up at 5 out of 8. You're not high enough." Now, but he then used to say, "Well, what can we do to improve the fillability of this job? Therefore." So he talked through with the client how they can make the job more attractive. And so I think it's a powerful tool. All of these tools we should be able to turn inside out and use, shouldn't we? But we certainly, when I was a recruiter and I ran a team, and I had the same rule for myself as people in my team, we used to have resources or researchers as trainee consultants attached to the team. And I said, if you have a fully top grade A vacancy that meets all of these criteria, then the juniors will work it. If it doesn't, you have to work it yourself. If it's category 2, and if it's category 3, you can only work it before 9 or after 5 o'clock. So getting people to just not waste their time on wishes and unqualified vacancies, there's flags, we can see like. The other thing you can do, by the way, on this, search companies did it, and I picked up on this as well and used to do it, is if the client, if a lot of things seem good, and you think, I wonder. If you're working a vertical, you've always got a really good CV. Maybe it's someone you've placed in the past or someone that you know is looking or whatever. Take the names off, strip down the detail, and send a benchmark CV to a client. Say, look, we haven't worked with you before. I'm going to send you a benchmark CV. The first part of the process is you come back to me with some feedback on this benchmark, and then we can really hone what we're looking for. If the client doesn't come back to you promptly on the benchmark, or they're elusive on feedback, fine, well, there's no point in sending them more CVs. But the number of recruiters that I sit down with, I'm sure Ali does the same, say, well, what do you think you should do now? Send them a small CVs? No, stop, No. What you should do is wait till you get a hold of them, qualify the vacancy better, and then the number of people on a Friday afternoon who are desperate to recruit someone, by Monday morning they've forgotten all about it. So don't waste your time. Your time's golden, like we said earlier on. I think a lot of recruiters work longer hours than they need to because they're working on crap. They're just on the treadmill where you don't need to be. All right, so there's some of the criteria attached to that. But also, it's about reducing your risk, isn't it? These are some of the things that are important, such as exclusivity. Some people do and don't like exclusivity. Some people want to get the client. I find either definitely getting interview dates or getting a set recruitment timetable, time to supply shortlist of CVs for the job, time when interviews are pre-booked, first, second interviews, time when offers will be made, and just, again, banging all of that into their calendar and my calendar so I know what I'm doing. And in the service level agreement, so saying, well, I'll submit CVs by this time, you'll give me feedback by this time. So the interdependencies are clearly mapped, because I found particularly some organisations that come back to you and start beating you up and saying, well, we've got to do this, that, those CVs weren't good enough. Well, hang on, you didn't let us know until 36 hours beyond when you were meant to let us know that they weren't good enough, by which time we could have fixed the problem. And you didn't give us feedback, therefore we didn't know exactly where they were. So again, these, for me, building on these interdependencies reduces risk. Now, it's much easier if we're working a vertical and we've got candidates that we can use and benchmark CVs we can use. But so many recruiters think, oh, this person's given me a vacancy and therefore they're a client. Well, they're not, are they? They're still a prospect in my eyes. There might be a suspect. They're not a buying client until they start spending money with you regularly. The number of one-off placements that are made in organisations and then never they place again is incredibly high. And I think something we forget as recruiters, that probably 80% of the recruiters that call clients that we're dealing with won't be in recruitment in a year's time, or certainly won't be in the organisation they're in. Yeah, okay. So that's that. I've done, crikey, time's flown by. So what are my top tips for quick returns? Golden time, treat it as golden. Core hours are absolutely sacred, so keep them that way. High performance, combining activities. If you work a vertical, clients are also candidates, and they're high-value candidates if you can place them. Or, sorry, the client contacts, hiring manager contacts that we come across during our BD work. They absolutely are, and when you've been around as long as I have, then today's candidates are definitely going to be tomorrow's clients. So tracking high-performing candidates is incredibly important too. And only working highly fillable jobs with candidates that we've got. If you want to do candidate marketing, I think for me that's a much more productive source than starting to work lower quality jobs. It's going out and looking for more better quality jobs. Think about that, the trust equation that I put up there, and really be consciously creating steps to build trust on every single call, and not just saying you can trust me, because if someone says to me you can trust me, I think I can't trust that person. What is it? But by demonstrating reliability, as I say, is a critical one, and that's one where most recruiters are seen as unreliable. So being reliable will set yourself apart from the rest of the pack. And developing your brand and profile, on LinkedIn, just adding new contacts every day, putting new messages out every day on your Twitter account, having a fresh, interesting website that's got news tickers on it. For me, that's incredibly important nowadays, isn't it? Okay, so that's the presentation. It's Q&A time, I guess.
Yeah, so if you've got a question, now if you want to put your hand up, I will attempt to unmute you so you can actually ask using your voice and your computer, or you are more than welcome to type something into the chat if you have a question. We've had one from Sean, which I think we've got answered quite nicely. Let me see. I've got a message here from Sean, Ben, that says, yeah, thank you for answering that. Sorry, I've been fiercely typing notes and her brain is blown. I've not.
In a good way,
I hope so. I've not got anything coming through from anybody else. If you do have a question from Ben, please type it in or put your hand up and I'll try and unmute you. Some of the things here I think are absolutely key. And when we're talking about what, if you're starting a new desk and you've got somebody else on it, and I guess I'm talking specifically to Kate, to Louise, Nick, you'll be doing this soon as well. People do tend to faff around with these C-grade jobs, and their time management goes totally out the window. Thinking, right, I think I can fill it. That we've got half a job there, but we really, really need to qualify those jobs in and make sure that they're A-grade jobs before they start faffing around with them. Instead of faffing around with those C-grade jobs, we need to start looking for those NPCs and working those NPCs to get the better jobs in. So I think if that's what is an issue, I know it is, it's worthwhile just being very careful and making sure you're setting boundaries with them on what they should be working and what they shouldn't be working in their time. Has anybody got any more questions for Ben? And if not, I'll give you another minute. Oh, look, here's some questions. Sean, I'm going to try and unmute you. Give me a second. It might work, it might not. One sec.
I think I've... Hello?
Hello? Sean, Sean, can you speak? Okay, that's not going to work. I can't hear Sean. So Sean said that if I'm setting up a candidate converter...
Can I do this? Can I make Sean the presenter?
I don't think she's got a microphone set up. I think that's the issue.
Okay.
So if she's setting up a candidate converter, and so for us, Ben, a candidate converter is looking at your slide set. It would be adding in literally this is what I'm going to do first, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. What information is key to get from them in the initial call except references? So anything that she needs to be thinking about. So let's say she's got a candidate. In fact, Sean's situation is she's got a whole heap of candidates that have been downloaded from a temp, and she's graded them from their CVs and their profiles, A, B, and C grade candidates. And she's going to start with those A grade candidates. And she's thinking, right, how do I start that process of getting that trust with them? What would you suggest that first initial call might be?
So these candidates, I'm guessing, are a mixture of they're passive candidates rather than being active candidates?
They could be a little bit of both. I think they've come from a job board, but it was a little while ago that they would have been downloaded. So they might have found a new role and they might have just left.
Yeah. Well, okay, what you'll find is most candidates you ring who are not looking for a job at the moment think you won't be interested in them. And when they say they're not interested in looking for a job at the moment, that could be just because they don't understand what opportunities are out there. So I talk to candidates in the same way as I talk to clients in this regard and said, look, the objective today is not to ring you up and send you up or convince you to look at a particular role that I have here. It's really to understand what's important to you when looking over the course of your career and how you see that emerging, when the next job change might be, and what you're working towards in terms of everything from income security to the content challenge of the roles that you work in, and really go back through that with them and get under their skin and build that trust through intimacy, but also through credibility. Because I think, if candidate says, "Well, I'm not looking for a job right now," don't call me again, or call me again in a year, or whatever it is. I'd say to people, look. We are constantly talking to organisations to identify where their game-changing roles are, their new opportunities, their best opportunities are, and that's where we're focused. We're focused on roles that can change, that can really transform organisations, top quality roles for individuals. Now, this might be over-egging it, depending on your job families that you're working, but nevertheless, I'd give them a strong message that we are constantly looking for the best opportunities for the best people. And if I ring you back in a year, and the best opportunity in the world for you came up 2 months prior to that, and you missed it. And there could well not be another one coming along for a little while. So we're putting things to chance. So we prefer a model where we're in contact regularly, quarterly, bi-monthly, whatever it is, over the course of the next few years with you, so that we can help you make those changes when you're ready to make them, but alternatively when the opportunities are there that can help make you. So I would put some sort of symbiosis across, say, look, we've got to work together, we've got to be in constant communication if we're going to find you the very best opportunities. Now, if that is maybe somebody in a more commoditized job, so they're saying, well, that sounds like smoke and mirrors to me, then we've got to find hooks, we've got to find things that would be of interest to them. Technology people are always interested in getting to grips with the latest pieces of technology. What are the hot buttons in their particular market? It's difficult for me to know. We found in pharmaceutical, for example, people would always be up for changing on to everybody to want to work on cancer-related projects rather than perhaps, dermatology or running tests on the latest skin creams that got rid of nasty itches was not really, people would always want to get onto, as I say, more high-flying type of projects. Or wherever they were working, if GlaxoSmithKline or one of the top pharma companies was looking, they would always be interested in that. And sometimes people just, blow you out on the phone, but there will be something that they'll be interested in talking. And if they do blow you out, call one. Again, 8 out of 10 people will, if they're passive, or might well do. Just re-establish the contact. Unless they're in a commodity role, where we can find people regularly through advertising, and it is very much an active market. But I don't think you guys are working more passive markets, aren't you? I think everybody on this call here.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a mix of both.
So credibility, I understand the market, I've got track on where the best opportunities are, and I've got track on helping, the top quartile of talent find their next opportunity. And I'd give them some examples then. For example, Fred Jones over at such and such, he wasn't looking. In fact, he'd only changed jobs 6 months previously, but had been at the company prior to that 5 months. But he could already see that the opportunities weren't there. We introduced another opportunity to him. He went for that and he's now been there for 3 years, or whatever the story is. But having some good stories, and if you're newer to recruitment, then get the good stories, get the good stuff from somebody else. Or alternatively, so you can embellish stories, but as long as you've got something to back it up.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because what they could be going in on that first call or a second call is using their expertise and the expertise of the candidates maybe. So they could go into it saying, look, I appreciate you're probably not looking for a role right now, but I wonder if I could pick your brains. I know, I've seen on your CV that you're exceptional at A, B, and C. maybe we can get some challenges that they're currently facing in there, or things that they'd want to see going forward, so that they can use that in some of those ethical bribes that they could put into that client converter moving forwards.
Yeah. Or I see, oh, you've just recently changed jobs, have you? Well, look, our research department are always interested in getting feedback and understand. Is it okay if I ask you 4 questions about what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, that's
Get
amazing.
it talking.
Yeah, and then Sean, what you could do is put together some, top 5 tips on making your job transition as easy as possible, or top 3 things that Glaxo would look for in a candidate and how you can get through that screening system. Something like that would be marvelous. Okay, does that help, Sean? And if anybody's got any more questions, now is the time to raise your hand or pop a question in there. Yeah, Sean says thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, so guys, thanks for your attention today. And Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. If there's any questions that you have for Ben moving forwards, feel free to put them into the Facebook group and I'll make sure that we get those answered. In the meantime, enjoy that. Put some action points together for either yourself or your newbies to get that timing right and start putting some actions in place on how to find the candidates and clients, and you should be moving along really quickly. Lovely to have you here. Thanks very much, and we'll see you all very soon. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.